Hello, PsychU community, and welcome to today's webinar, The Human Social Brain, Alterations in Schizophrenia. My name is Dr. Dri Wang, and I'm from the Otsuka Medical Affairs team. I will be serving as the moderator for this discussion featuring Dr. Michael Green and Dr. Stephen Marder. Today's webinar is sponsored by Otsuka and Lundbeck, committed supporters of the mental health treatment community. So we will kick off the discussion with Dr. Marder. Dr. Marder, as a clinician, why is social cognition important to you?
Well, let me talk as both a researcher and a clinician. You know, from a research standpoint, controlling psychosis really doesn't help patients function better that much. That actually there are other impairments in schizophrenia that stand in the way of their being able to re-engage even when they're remitted. When our patients come in as a clinician, they want more than to just be able to stay out of the hospital. They're interested in returning to school. They're interested in interacting with friends. They're interested in becoming again a part of their community. So understanding the kind of social cognitive impairments in schizophrenia is really vital to clinical care.
So let me take off from where Dr. Marder was talking, which is that it's important for us to understand what's holding individuals back, individuals with schizophrenia who have trouble navigating their worlds. And a lot of the work that has been done up until this point is on cognition, but more specifically non-social cognition. So attention, memory, problem solving, speed of processing, but not necessarily for social information. More recently, investigators and clinicians have started paying more attention to problems in social cognition. So social cognition is how we make sense of our social world. So for example, it's the ability to recognize emotion in faces. It's to make good guesses as what other people are thinking and feeling. It's how we regulate our own emotions so that we can adapt better to our daily lives. Now, individuals with schizophrenia have problems in these areas. There's a number of different domains of social cognition. They don't have problems in all of them, but they have problems in several of them. And we know now that not only do they have impairments in these areas, but these impairments affect how they navigate their social world and how successful they are socially. We also know that there's certain brain regions that underlie this type of processing. It's generally referred to as the social brain. It's those areas of the brain that are specific for social processing.
So Dr. Marder, as a clinician, how do you see social cognition impairments in the clinic and how do you assess for it?
Yeah. In a clinical setting, patients show wide variation in their social abilities and how they're actually interacting in the community. So I think a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a clinician should assess the source of why a patient is reluctant to socialize or is failing in their attempts. It could be because they're suspicious, which would require one approach. It could be because they've had years of failure in establishing social relationships. It could be because they have negative symptoms, a kind of a lack of desire to interact with other people. But for others, these impairments in social cognition, the inability of people to detect social signals or to mentalize can be a factor. And it's important for clinicians to understand that that's a root cause of their reluctance to engage in the community and perhaps their failure at having friends and rich social interactions.
Is there any importance in timing, on like when you introduce the social cognitive rehab, or there's a way to coach them to be better at, let's say, mentalizing or social cue perception? Are there specific timing in their illness where it's more fruitful than other time?
Well, I think the first thing that's necessary would be to minimize the person's psychosis. You know, if a person's lack of interest in social activity is related to suspiciousness, that requires, better antipsychotic medications. But I think once they're in a stable condition, it's probably a reasonable time. Now, certainly, one can make an argument for doing it at any point in the illness, particularly in first episodes, because what you don't want is to have people with schizophrenia accumulating a series of failures in as they attempt to socialize. But even later in the illness, when patients may show an interest in returning to work after years or decades of not being and not working or going to school, I think that it's a reasonable to try to help them learn more about detecting social signals and to sort of facilitate their being able to have richer interactions with people in the community.